Welcome to Tech Talks, Evolving Distribution. I'm Corey Hayes, and with me is Bill Rosado. Today, we're exploring how digital transformation is reshaping the distribution industry.
That's right. From e-commerce platforms to CRM tools, we talk with industry experts about how distribution can embrace these changes and thrive in the ever-changing space.
Whether you're just getting started or looking for new insights, we've got you covered. Today's episode is packed with information to help you navigate the digital shift.
So let the tech talk begin.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Tech Talks. Corey Hayes here alongside Bill Rosado, and we have a very special guest today, Jerome from Enlighten.net. Thank you so much for jumping on. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
We're
Excited for you to be here. Yeah, excited for you to be here. Excited to get into the conversation. So we always start before we get into the questions that we have. Just tell us a little bit about yourself. Introduce yourself to the listener. Introduce Enlighten.net and talk about that. What it is that you guys do.
Sure. So my journey and Enlighten.net's journey are the same, basically. I started in this industry in the mid '90s, working for an ERP platform called Disk. Some of your listeners may have heard of that. That was eventually bought by Profit 21. They didn't want my part of the little business that I was working in, which was creating a new standalone solution called Enlighten.net. So we took advantage of that, started over and started a new company. Had a couple of partners from Disk. We started off as a competitor to SharePoint. Competing against Microsoft was not a good business plan. So we pivoted. An existing customer called and complained about their filing cabinets full of documents, and we turned into a document management company.
Yeah.
And that's been driving our business since 2004. Actually, that's when we started.
Awesome.
I didn't even have hair then, though, so not been that long. Yeah,
Bill didn't either. It's okay.
Yeah, Bill didn't either. No, it's just embrace the bald, right, Bill?
Yeah,
That's right.
That's right.
It's funny because we go to trade shows every once in a while, and I told Bill, I said, I noticed something about your friends. They're all bald too.
We do unite a little bit.
Yeah.
So what it really comes down to, Jerome, is I think that we try to connect with the most intelligent people in the room, and they usually don't have hair. Right?
That's right. That's exactly what happens.
Yeah.
It's very well said, Bill.
Less standing in the way between information just soaking in. There you go.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for jumping on. Really excited to get into the conversation today. Excited to talk about what you've seen and just the digital transformation shift and, tips that you have along the way.
Sure.
Yeah. Bill, you want to jump into the conversation?
Yeah, so, it's great that you explained how Enlighten.net came about. And it really was somebody, a customer calling you, right? And has a challenge. What other challenges or similar challenges have you seen in the digital transformation space?
So, I think it's almost cliche to say that resistant to change is the biggest obstacle that we see to get adoption in digital transformation. And let me step back. And our part of digital transformation is get rid of that paperwork, get rid of the stuff stuck in Bill's email that Corey can't find, and put a centralized location around it so that people can access that data and unlock it. And we complement ERP systems. We're not an ERP, we're document management. So people come to us because they recognize they're either overwhelmed with, in that customer's case, filing cabinets full of paper, or a network share that they can't figure out where the invoice from 2 months ago was, or the purchase order from 6 months ago, and they need better ways to find it. So that's what drives them to come to us. So that's kind of an obstacle already. But the real obstacle to getting to that adoption is their users are used to doing it the way they've always done it, their employees. And everyone says that. So we all have our strategies of, I find the most resistant person and I make them my champion, and I do that through the application and our solutions, and just force of will and personality, like win them over. I find the biggest challenger, the one who's the least positive at the beginning, if you can flip them, then you've got the biggest advocate in the company
Yeah.
too. But since I think some of your other guests have talked about change management issues, and that sounds too corporate for a lot of our customers, by the way, the resistance to change, I think I was thinking about the biggest issue is, or the biggest difficulty is when customers don't really know what it is they have, what they're trying to do. They've got a bad digital process. It's evolved over 25 years. How do I pay invoices? When they started it, they were opening envelopes, taking the piece of paper, writing the voucher number on it, stapling it to the packing list, and putting it in a filing cabinet. And over the years, what's changed? The invoice isn't mailed to them, it's emailed. So how did they adapt? They printed the invoice. And now they're still doing that years later, but they want to go paperless. So then the leadership says, hey, go paperless. And the accounting people say, well, I still need to write the voucher number on it and staple it. Well, that's not going paperless. That's taking a bad manual process and making it a bad digital process. So they really need to analyze what it is they're trying to accomplish, what they're trying to do. And we try to help with that without being a business consultant. We're not in that field, and that becomes tricky.
Yeah. And I think it's a powerful thing when you pull out just having practical resources and having logistical resources that help you scale. Because I mean, everybody wants to grow their business, right? That's
Right.
plain as day. Everybody wants to grow. But when you really look at what does it actually strategically take to grow, it's a pattern, it's a plan. And there are resources that you need, practical as they are, that help you in that avenue towards that growth, towards the pattern of growth that you want to achieve. And you're right. I don't think a lot of people 100%, a lot of distributors know exactly what they have. A lot of the prospects and companies that we work with, it just kind of seems like, well, they're just lost. you know,
Right.
yeah. And you need to every listener, you need resources in your corner that can help you navigate those shifts, that can help you navigate that experience into that digital shift. And having people like Net that have done it, for years and years, like that's a great resource to have in your corner. So kind of on the other side of this, Jerome, talking about challenges and talking about what you've seen that has been a difficulty and maybe a hurdle. What's the other side of it? What have you seen that makes a successful digital transformation project? When you think about the successes that EnlightenNet has come across, what do those successes look like?
Typically, those successes come from a good leadership team, whether that leadership team is knows just knowing what they're trying to do, where they're trying to go, and can communicate with their employees. So a lot of change management is literally that, right? Communicate with your employees about the future state, and start to get into buzzwords. I'm trying to avoid that. We're not a buzzword company. But the good leadership team that can explain to that AP clerk has been doing it the same way for 25 years, why now we have to change. We need to do something different. And it's either scalability or allow that person to retire. We see a lot of that. Or tell an entire AP team that by going with an automation solution, we're not eliminating you. We're not eliminating your jobs. We're taking you from data entry jobs to data validation jobs. So it's higher value. You can perform more and do other things rather than type one number that you're reading off of a piece of paper into another box. And really, it's the communication. So the ones that are most successful, they have that in place. That's what it is.
And I think to your point, you don't even know this, but we had a conversation with a distributor on this podcast very, very recently that told us and brought out, the other side of the point that you just made. Having a digital solution in place saved us so much time that it actually allowed us to grow in other areas, and it allowed us to do more with our business. And he said we didn't even expect the kind of ROI that we got wasn't directly necessarily connected to dollars coming from the digital shift, but it was the time that it saved us. and ways that we found to spend more valuable time. So that's a great point.
And we've had a tough time over the years, you said ROI, coming up with real ROI calculations, because those ROI calculations have a hard time taking into account when that same resource can now do other things. And we don't know. We've heard sometimes, hey, your system paid for itself in our paper savings alone in 2 months. I'm like, that's great. You didn't tell us you were spending that much money on paper. Like, that's insane. What were you?
They may not even known until after the fact, you know?
Exactly. So we get asked about ROI all the time. I'm sure you do, and everybody else does. I mean, that's the smart thing. What's the ROI going to be? And it is a hard calculation. We have 2 customers implement the exact same solution, and their ROI will be different because of what they were doing already versus the way they implement and embrace and adopt. And as I heard someone say, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts in the Profit 21 area, everyone seems to do something different, do the same things, but differently. Like, there's just enough uniqueness with every customer that, you know, ROI calculations in advance don't really tell the whole story.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, we're in the distribution community, and that's pretty broad and wide. People don't realize that, right? They're in a specific industry, and everybody does exactly the same thing. We work with distributors on different ERPs that do a whole lot of different things, different products, but it all comes back to the same thing: is Peggy is doing this manually, and how long can Peggy do it manually? And then what happens when Peggy retires? Because Peggy's the only person who knows how to do this, right? So you're offering a solution that helps automate that, but also the person that's probably going to replace Peggy, because let's be clear, we're not in the most sought after industry. No one comes out of college going, let's jump into distribution, right?
Right. And even if they say, let's jump into distribution, they're not saying, oh, I want to be in the back office.
Right? So you got to give them tools, right, to get the talent to stay in our community. And so distribution continues to grow rather than just retire, as all these people that have been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years retire.
Right. I think you've hit 2 things I wanted to comment on there. One is that our industry that we sell to is mature. It's been around a while, right? So there are a lot of companies out there that are family owned. They might be fairly large, but they're family owned, and they're about to transition to the next generation, which means the leadership's on the older side. We'll just try to be polite, and maybe a little stuck in their ways. And that leads to, we see that a decent amount. Hey, I'm ready to do this, but my parents aren't. So when they retire, it'll be my turn to take care of it, or things like that. But then the other thing was that you saw, Antenna. Oh, COVID really brought that to light for us. It forced. So one of the advantages of not having a piece of paper is you don't need to hand it to someone, right? If it's digital, we literally were told a story, and I hate the COVID stories, but this one's kind of funny to me. A company that was printing out their checks, and the accounting manager would take the stack of checks to a park, put the stack of checks on the park bench. It was like spy stuff, right? And then move to another bench while the CFO who was sitting in the car would then get out, sign the checks, and then and while our solution doesn't deal with signatures on checks, it just illustrates how paper is in 1975, not 2025. And COVID really drove that home for a lot of companies and a lot of people. And then the generation shift that's coming, or in progress actually, but is also a big issue there.
Yeah. And one thing I want to point out before we get to this last question, Bill, and it's something that I don't think we kind of hint at and talk around on this podcast, but have never really talked about it directly. And you pointed it out a couple times, is just the level of leadership that's in place. And, that's such a great point. And of a lot of times shifts, projects, anything that can help, update the company gets shot down by leadership, or just the mismanagement of leadership. And I guess let me just like take a second and address the listener. If you're a leader in the distribution space, if you're a leader at your company, it doesn't even have to be a distribution space. If you're a leader in general, take time, make a concerted effort to learn and get resources on what it means to be a good leader and gain skills because it's going your business is going to benefit the projects that your employees do are going to benefit your employees themselves are going to benefit everything benefits from you taking the time to hone in your leadership skills. So I like that you brought that point out, and I just wanted to hit that nail on the head a little bit more.
I think you made that a much more cogent argument for that than I did. Thank you.
Yeah.
We could do a whole podcast on leadership.
Yeah, and might be
there are
more
people that do.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah. Might get the most views we've ever got. I don't know.
You never know.
All right, so here's the most difficult question you're going to get asked, right? What's that one tip, that one thing that someone can take away from this podcast and make this transformation better, right, for their organization?
Do your homework. Do your homework on your own company. That's what it is. Really figure out what it is your company is doing that is holding you back. And then it's a matter of prioritizing and deciding which place, not the one place, because there's obviously more than one, right? Which place within the company to move forward. I always joke that document management is everyone thinks it's important, but it's fourth or fifth on their to-do list because it's not mission critical to what they do. And yet every one of our customers gets it and says, how did I live without this? It's because they didn't dive into document management, in our case, hits every part of their business. So if they streamline that, they're actually improving to some extent every part of their business. And that's the big challenge. So do your homework on your own company and figure out what it is that's holding you back.
Yeah, that's a great piece. And I mean, I don't know any other. When we talk about, we always end this with what's the biggest tip. I don't know a bigger tip than that. I don't know one that's more important than that. Understand your company top to bottom. And just to kind of tie it back in with what we were talking about, I think a lot of times CEOs, presidents, people in executive positions get focused on having all the right answers. And sometimes it seems like they almost take a stab at what the answer to the issue really is without ever really trying to ask the questions necessary to understand the issue itself.
Right.
In their company, to understand where we're lacking, why aren't we growing, and never take the time to ask the right questions, to have honest conversations, to really understand the issues. So then the answer that they come up with never really makes sense, and it never really fixes the solution. So I like about what you brought out, and just understanding your company, take the time to do your homework, ask the right questions, bring the right people to the table, and really understand the pieces of your company. It's great.
Right. But you can't be too introspective because you don't know that the people on the team in a manual scenario in a non-digital environment are the same ones you want on the team in the digital environment. Now, that sounds scary to the people who are workers. Maybe, no, they don't necessarily want me. That's not necessarily true. If you're an employee, you need to make sure your skills are moving forward to where the company needs to go. But as a leader, you have to balance asking the questions of what's holding you back, but also know that there's bias in that answer from them.
Yeah.
Peggy, back to Bill's point, who's getting ready to retire in accounts payable, doesn't really have a ton of interest in changing her process because either she's going to retire soon or she just thinks it's a headache, right? But you might find that you can incentivize her if you're leading as well as listening. So it's a balance. That back to the leadership, it's a little bit of a balance to both.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for what you've given us and being a part of the conversation. Really enjoyed what you brought out in the conversation today. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in to another episode of Tech Talks. We'll be with you every first and third Wednesday of the month. And looking forward to seeing you again, Jerome, on another one of our trade shows that we've got coming up. I don't know where you're going next, but looking forward to hanging out with you again soon.
Sounds good. Looking forward to the same.
All right.
Thanks, Jerome.
Thanks, guys.
You. And that's a wrap for today's episode of Tech Talks Evolving Distribution. Thanks for tuning in.
And we hope you've gained some valuable insights on how to embrace digital transformation and stay ahead in the distribution industry.
A special thanks to our sponsor, Aldrich Web Solutions, for supporting this podcast. With over 20 years of experience, they've been helping distributors win online and maximize their digital presence. Be sure to check them out if you're ready to take your business to the next level.
And if you enjoyed the episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave us a review. And of course, share this with anyone who could benefit from this conversation.
We'll be back next time with more expert insights. And until then, keep evolving and embracing change.